Hello, Councillor Shada. Hey, Julie, I see you. You're still on mute, but I can unmute you.
Okay.
Okay, now you're unmuted. So
Hi,
you,
Becca. Oh, she's on mute too.
yeah.
Hi, Jenny.
Hi, Mayor. How are you doing?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
Good. Oh, let me see who this is.
See the power supplies. Oh, look, got a connect.
I know. Can't believe it. Let me tell you. I don't know how I did it.
What's your name?
I put something totally fucking bogus in there. But
There you go.
can you put one of the shopping bags and see for the white? I have like 67%.
I don't know where your power supply is.
Judy, on my screen, I've got 9 images here. So block for everybody, for all the council members except Councilwoman Woolbrook. I don't know if you just can't see her yet. Also, Councilman Shada and and Denise are I have black boxes, no audio, no video. Okay, so Denise, I'm seeing you now.
I did send messages to turn the video on. So
Okay,
it is up to them to turn their video on. And I did find Counselor Wolbrook, and did she come through? Let me find out why she didn't come over.
okay.
Oh, here we go. We'll do it again.
Okay, and can we increase the number of images? Judy,
It should do it automatically. I do have 4 rows of 3 on mine.
Would you go up to and see if the power
I'm showing,
there?
I have 3 by 3.
Okay, you might have a scroll button. It could just be the size of your monitor.
Okay, so, what are the how many boxes do the rest of you see? Julie, how many?
I can see 11, and Nancy's trying to raise her hand, so I'm guessing she might be muted. Oh, no, she's just, no. Oh, I'm misunderstanding her sign language.
I think it's
9,
9.
3, 6, 9, 10, and then 11 is Bob Todd, who just sort of blacked out for a second, but he was here a minute ago. And then John is still blacked out on mine.
Yeah, John Shade is blacked out on mine.
His video is actually on. I believe he probably just doesn't have his camera activated in a way that we can see him. There we go. Okay, so everybody has their videos on.
I'm calling John.
Okay, I'm still just getting 9 boxes. Does anyone else have 9, or is everybody else have more?
I have more.
Okay,
I have 9.
I have 9.
9.
I have 9.
Do you have it open to a full screen?
Yes, yeah. And Councilman Wolbrook just sent me a message. She has 11 participants.
I have 11 participants and they all show on my screen.
Okay. I'm showing 11 panelists.
Oh,
and
you
20
know, oh, I'm sorry. I have a suggestion.
Yeah, Julie.
I just noticed on mine, when I put full screen, I only can see 9 faces. But when I go to less than full screen, I can actually see all 11 of us. That might help you on your computer, I don't know.
Okay.
Thank you, Julie.
Okay, so where's, anybody know where the full screen is? I'm sorry to be so ignorant.
Mine is in the upper right-hand corner of the black trim around all of the faces. In the upper right-hand corner. It just looks like a little square with a circle in the middle.
Oh, I see.
I'm the last person to be giving computer advice to anybody. I'm horrible. But I noticed that.
Okay. I'm still just getting the 9, and actually I'm still showing a black box for John Shada.
I know where. Let me see.
John, can you hear us? He's on mute too.
I can hear you. I don't know what's wrong with my camera.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
now we can, John, at least.
Oh.
Okay, okay, so now I see Councilwoman Wilbrook. Well, John, yeah, we're still missing you.
John, do you want to reboot and click the thing at the very, very beginning that says video? Turn the video on?
Yeah, I fiddled with that, and I don't know, maybe there's just something wrong with my camera. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Well,
Oh, Bob is trying to talk and he's muted.
okay. And I saw Bob, but now he's off my screen. And Judy's on the phone. I think she's probably trying to talk to John Shada to resolve something. Susan, do you have your hand raised there?
No, just
No, just
good
stretching.
question, but no.
Well, if we have a minute, maybe Judy, when she gets off the phone, she could.
Okay, I
Yes.
did that. Is that working?
Yay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. So I'm gonna start calling the roll then. Well, first off, I'll call this meeting of the Manatee Springs City Council to order. It's 6:06 p.m., March 31st. It's a work session. And we'll begin with kind of an interesting way to call the roll call. Judith Chandler.
Here.
Okay, and I can't see it, Judith. It may just be the limitations of my system. Okay,
I can see you
okay,
and everyone else, so I'm sorry that you can't see me. Although
Okay.
I've been working in my garden all day, so maybe it's a good thing.
Well, I guess we're going to operate with some constraints. Mayor Pro Tem Fortune,
Present.
I can see you, that's good. The mayor is here. Councilman Shada,
Here?
okay, we can hear you, but we can't see you, John, so we're going to
Yeah, I
have to
know.
factor that in, yeah. Councilman Todd,
Here,
okay, and I can't see you.
I can see you, John, Becca. I can see Julie, Nancy. That's it.
Okay. So how many total can you see, Bob?
Hello. I can see 1, 2, 3 others plus you.
Councilwoman Wolf,
I can see 11 if I include John and Judy, who are both black boxes, but they're still there. Oh, and
okay,
now I see Judy. So
okay,
yeah, I see 11.
okay, and you're here, Councilwoman Wolf, okay, and
Oh, yes.
Councilwoman Wilbrook.
I'm here and I can see 10 and John just doesn't have video. That's
Okay,
okay.
okay. Judy, be worth a minute or two for you to explain the chat function to us?
Okay, actually, I went ahead and turned off the chat because I guess people are chatting, but typically under the chat function, you do have a box that has a pull down that says to, and you can select who you want to send your chat to, but we don't want our council to be chatting amongst themselves. It's strictly like if you need to send something to me or kind of an emergency thing, but like to
Okay,
we just handle like you're in a regular council meeting and just,
yeah, we want to avoid side conversations.
right.
And then generally what I depend upon is actually seeing you actually physically raise your hand. There is a raise hand function. Judy, would you explain that, please?
Okay, so under the participant, if you click on the participant icon, it will bring a little panel along the side and show who's participating. And there's a little button there that says more. And go down to that, scroll down through that list, there's a statement that says raise hand. If you click on that, it will actually put a little raised hand next to your name. And that's our way of knowing that you wish to get the attention of the chair.
Okay, and I just did it. I don't see that on my screen, on maybe
Okay.
you others.
I see it on mine. I have Judith Chandler and John Graham and Todd.
Okay, and I'm gonna lower my hand now, so,
Okay.
okay. And let's see, Mayor Pro Tem, could you hit the raise hand function, please, so I can see what?
Can you see it?
No, I'm not seeing anything.
Judy, can you see it?
I can. It shows up on mine.
So the host is the only one who can see it?
Wait, I think Becca can see it. Becca, she's nodding, okay. And
Yeah, so I think some of us can. And it also, right now, it also shows up on your gallery mode next in the corner of the picture.
okay.
You can.
It doesn't show on mine, so maybe it's the iPad thing that
Yeah,
It must be.
I still only have 9 people on mine as well, and I can't figure out how to get more than that.
okay,
Okay.
yeah. I think members of council, basically, we have iPads, right? And then
Mhm.
others have Windows machines, probably?
Yes.
Does that sound okay? All right. Well, I think without any further ado, we should get started on our business tonight. First item of discussion is a briefing on the first quarter finances, presentation by Becca. So Becca, you have the floor, please.
Okay, I need Denise to share her screen. That's where our PowerPoint presentation is.
Okay, bear with me as I share the screen, so hold on a second.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, Julie.
I keep hearing this noise and it sounds like music in the background and it's like every 2 seconds. Are you
Me
guys
too.
hearing that?
I am too.
Yeah, I don't know what the heck it is, but it's very distracting.
It sounds
Oh,
like
there
an
it is.
alarm or something.
Yeah,
Like someone has their phone is someone's trying to call them on their cell phone or something.
Exactly. I'm hearing that too.
yeah.
Can everyone turn their phone on silent?
There it goes again.
Yeah. Maybe it's somebody in the other room.
Could it be?
In all of our rooms.
So I'll work on sharing my screen. Before I do that, I do want to recognize Becca and all the work she's done with this. She has been running models and scenarios and talking with other financial financial officers, and did an amazing job with helping us and leading us through the financial implications of this. So with that, let me go ahead and share my screen if I can make this work. Do you see it now?
Yes.
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 Let me start with this slideshow, so bear with me. Can you see it? The screen?
Yes.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, great.
This was not part of our packet, is that right?
That's
Right.
correct.
That is
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
Okay, so this is an update to the budget to just give City Council a view of where we are and what our recommendations are in terms of the budget. Next slide.
You see it, Becca?
It's still on the first one.
Oh, does everybody see the first one?
Yes.
Oh, mine shows the second one. Bear with me. We practiced this today, so I'm not sure what happened.
And it looks like it's live, Denise. I see your cursor moving around.
Yeah,
You just need to get the slideshow started.
And I see an option to press on the second slide, but when I press on it, it doesn't do anything.
Right.
Okay, let me see. We practiced this like crazy.
There you go. I think that's all you needed to do is start the slideshow.
Do you see it now?
Denise, I think if you just click on the second slide on the left, it will go to the second one.
Ah,
Work?
Beautiful.
yes.
Yay.
That works.
Thank you.
So
Okay.
easy.
So during this difficult time, the city's priorities are to protect the community, employees, businesses, and visitors, to maintain staffing levels, and to maintain financial stability. And here's an important thing to remember. The water, wastewater, and stormwater funds are enterprise funds and do not impact the general fund, which is the operating fund of the city. Next slide. In June of last year, department heads started going over their budgets in extremely close detail, questioning every expenditure. So we went into 2020 with a lean budget. And in terms of sales tax, we started out the year strong. Then the coronavirus hit. Earlier in March, our city administrator proactively enacted the following steps: hiring freeze. Vacant positions remain vacant for non-essential personnel. Full stop on all capital projects and equipment purchases that impact the general fund. She had staff review all service contracts, cutting non-essential contracts, and all discretionary expenditures not directly related to this emergency were frozen. And we imposed strict controls on overtime. Next slide. Now, best practices, as recommended by the Government Finance Officers Association, GFOA, recommends a general fund balance of 17% or 2 months of expenditures. In 2016 and 2017, the general fund balance was at 37% and 36% respectively. But in 2018, the fund balance dropped to 14%. In 2019, although the year is not closed yet, it appears that due to the diligence of the department heads cost cutting and to an extremely strong fourth quarter in sales tax, the fund balance will end at 21%. So we started 2020 in a good position. Next slide. One of the reasons the sales tax has had such a strong fourth quarter was the vendor type outside of city sales tax. In past years, the big gorilla in this category was the sales tax we received from Colorado Springs Utilities for selling electricity to Manitou Springs customers. Others in this category are cellular services and sales tax on car leases. But in June 2018, the Supreme Court ruled in the court case South Dakota versus Wayfair that states can mandate that businesses without a physical presence in the state with more than 200 transactions or 100,000 in in-state sales must collect and remit sales taxes to the state. The state collects the city sales tax and then remits it to us. We started seeing money from outside the city filers like Amazon trickle in 2018, and then in 2019 more and more came in. This slide graphically shows the outside of the city vendors sales tax with Colorado Springs Utilities removed. In 2017, the sales tax received was $84,000. Then in 2018, it more than doubled to $290,000. In 2019, it doubled again to $594,000. Oh, wait an hour. Sorry, I've got a message on my machine. Okay, $594,000. The last 3 months came in really strong. This year, 2020 started well. We received sales tax 2 months after vendors collected, so we just received the January sales tax. It is almost $50,000 more than January 2019 sales tax. We have heard anecdotally from store owners that February 2 was a good month. But now with our new reality of the coronavirus, we're re-examining the budget. Next slide. Neil Minch and I have been modeling how sales tax might act in the next several months. And I've compared this to other cities' assumptions. We have taken this month by month using the worst case scenario in our assumptions with a gradual sales tax recovery as the year progresses. I then took into account other revenues that will be impacted: parking, amusement tax, lodging tax, the pool. And all combined, I believe we're looking at a potential loss of over $2 million. Also, El Paso County has extended the deadline for filing property taxes to September 1st. Now, while we still will receive all our real property tax, it's normally received in the first part of the year. And with this delay in receipt, that could cause a cash crunch if it wasn't planned for. So with budget cuts identified by department heads, if the city retains the URA funds budgeted at 1.3 million for this year, we can stay solvent. Next slide. So in terms of reductions, what have we done? We've negotiated reductions in most of the city's contracts. I've already mentioned that staff vacancies will remain vacant for non-essential personnel. We have cut all travel and training except for that required to maintain credentials, office supplies, printing and publications, and at this time, we're not pursuing the lease purchase 2020. That's at vehicle and equipment purchases. Next slide. So I just want to let you know, we can continue with projects that do not impact the general fund. These are projects that are funded by other sources. And these other sources are numerous, and I'm going to name them all right now. The Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments, the Pikes Peak Rural Transportation Authority, the city's Conservation Trust Fund, the El Paso Becker's Park Fund, the Transportation Fund. There's a Department of Local Affairs grant, the remaining sales tax revenue from the downtown improvement bonds that was approved by ballot in November 2019 to be spent on further downtown improvements, and committed East End sales tax from 2018 and 2019. Next slide. Oops, there was an additional, oh, okay, never mind, that slide changed. So here are the following steps that are being taken for the community. We're going to keep up-to-date information on the city website and social media. Provide updates from the mayor. For water bills, we are not charging late fees, nor will anyone's water be shut off in the months of March and April. And people who are having trouble paying their water bills can make payment arrangements over the phone. Parking will be free through April 30th, with the exception of Bar Trail and the Ruxton Corridor for traffic control purposes. The Chamber has a loan program that the city has provided funding to in the past to help local businesses. And we're also looking at our fee schedule to see if any fees can be adjusted, and we'll be bringing that back on April 14th. Next slide. We're monitoring the situation on a day-to-day basis. We're thinking outside the box in terms of cost savings and questioning every expense. We'll be bringing an amended budget to City Council in June. And with the current hiring freeze and the implemented spending cost and retaining the URA funding, there should be minimal negative impact on the general fund balance. The leadership team is meeting daily. We care. We are here to help the community proactively and with innovative practices, and we'll get through this. Thank you.
Thank you, Becca.
Thank you.
Questions?
Yeah, council questions for Becca?
Becca, if I may,
Just-
not
excuse me,
only,
Bob, excuse me, I saw Julie's hand up
oh, I'm
first.
sorry. Oh, yeah,
Well-
right. I forgot the protocol. Thank you.
Oh,
I'm
that's
sorry.
okay.
It's hard because I can't see Bob. Well, Councilwoman Wolf, and then we'll follow with Councilman Todd.
Oh, I just, at the beginning, there was a comment about a $2 million loss estimated for 2020 for the entire year. And yet then I guess it was offset with the URA 1.3 million, but I didn't understand how we ended up with a negligible, if any, loss to the general fund. I missed that.
Because we've also, the department heads have all looked at their departments and have cut as much as they can, the travel, the professional services, and various other.
I think
So-
I get it now. So
Right.
we will have less money, but we're spending so much less that you think you can balance it.
Right, we're going to be delaying a lot of things,
Okay.
Thank
Councilman
you.
Todd?
Becca, first, just a quick question. When you say the general fund reserve will not be impacted, you're referring to at the end of, as projected, year-end 2020. That's your
That is-
sense.
That is correct.
And then would you please just say what that number is, just so we all have it in our mind?
It's 1,083,970. That's what is currently in the budget.
I recall that number now, thank you. And then to your comment, if I may, that we will get through this. I'm absolutely confident you will get through this. And I'm really pleased to finally see you. I can't believe it. You're in your chair, in your office, and it's a
I'm in my
super piece
home.
of work you've done. Oh, you're in your home.
Well,
All
it's
right.
my husband's
Yeah.
office. It's my husband's office.
Okay.
All right. I hope he's doing well too. You look
He's
great.
doing
Thank you.
better.
Great.
Do we have other questions?
Judith,
Judith?
Can everyone hear me?
yes.
Yes.
Okay. So it's my understanding that we have put a hold on all projects that are requiring matching grants. And I'm sure I should be able to tick off all those projects that are requiring matching funds, but I don't. Could you provide us with a list of all of the projects that are on hold because we're waiting because of matching funds?
That's a good point, and we are going to have that listed to you after this meeting. We'll have to
Okay.
talk about it to get it all together, but thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Julie, I'd like to just go ahead and pull the rest of council, and we'll come back to you if that's okay. Councilwoman Wolbrook, do you have comments, questions?
Yes, I do. Thanks, Mayor. We got an email this shortly before the council meeting regarding the URA funds. You know, I've never been a fan of this because I don't like to treat the URA fund as a slush fund that we can just pop into. I think it keeps the URA from doing some really important things that we need to do in the URA that are more than, let's say, aesthetic or decorative. We've missed some opportunities, I think, in the past to do some things that could have possibly led to affordable housing and maybe even a local grocery store that might have been a real asset long-term for us. That being said, the coronavirus is pretty extraordinary. So I would modify my former stance on this, which has been pretty headstrong for those of you who have been on council with me. And I liked in the email the fact that we can have, I would like to see us formalize this when we take this money and use it, even if it's for a good cause. I would also like to see us in flush times return that money to the URA. I don't know why we've never done that before in the time that we took it, I believe in 2018. That would make me feel a lot better about it. It would give some accountability and transparency to this, and it would reassure the URA that while they're willing partners, usually they were in 2018, to help the city, we need to put that money back when times are good so that they can do the things that we want them to do. And maybe Becca or Denise can talk about when the URA ends, because it sunsets at some point, does it not?
It does sunset. I don't believe that I have that information right here at hand, but I can provide that to you tomorrow in an email.
Okay, and that's basically, you know, I've said it before, I'm generally not comfortable with this. These are extraordinary times, but if we could agree as a council to formalize that, including the money we took in 2018, and start coming up with a plan to give them the money back when things are better for us as a city, that would feel good to me. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Councilman Shada, comments, questions? I see he's muted. Can we?
Hi.
Hi.
I don't have any questions.
You don't? Okay. Mayor Pro Tem? You're muted. Can we unmute?
Nothing. No, I appreciated the presentation, and it's good to see such diligence going into trying to figure out how we're going to move forward. Thank you.
Okay. And then if I may, I'd like to explain a little bit about the current, I think the current take on URA. I had contacted probably a week or a little more ago, just a simple email to Ann Nichols and to Jim Reese, and told them that it looked like, given the budget situation, we would probably be real reluctant to release the money and that we would need it for the general fund. They didn't have any opposition to that. It was a pretty brief comment and pretty much said, we figured you probably need to do that. I did have a fairly lengthy conversation with Marcy Morrison this morning over the URA, and she understands the situation, but briefly she was hoping that we wouldn't take all the money. She would like to see that we would leave the URA enough money to have a functional budget to where they can perform maintenance tasks, to where they can replace plants and materials and basically their landscaping. She'd like to see that landscaping project completed by the end of summer. And then the third point that she had was the Becker's Lane Bridge. She would like to see that completed. Given those things, and then she was also asking for something in writing from the city and for a kind of a 5-year scope on this, so that they'd have 5 years of being able to at least plan with a kind of a sustainable budget. So I think it would be appropriate to ask the city administrator to meet with the URA people and see if we can work something out to where they've still got something of a budget. But I think we need to anticipate, under the circumstances, keeping most of the money for the city's general fund.
Mayor, Councilor Todd has his hand up.
Okay, just a minute. Councilwoman Wolf had asked, so I'll recognize Councilwoman Wolf and then Councilman Todd. Julie?
Oh, thank you. It's just a quick question. So if we maintain the general fund or the reserves from the general fund, is that still at 17% of our total estimated annual budget?
I think it was going to be a bit lower, but since last year it looks like it's going to end up higher, I think we'll be able to get it up to that 17%. At this point, I can't say definitively that is the case, but that is our goal.
And is that the recommended minimum for cities?
Right, it's the recommended amount by the Government Finance Officers Association. It's actually 17% of revenues or 17% of expenditures, whichever is more you can predict better, and we've always been able to predict our expenditures better than our revenues.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good. Councilman Todd.
Yeah, just a quick historical comment if it's useful to this question about the URA being short of funds. Like Councilman Warbrook, I was also very adamant that this be the, if I can use the term, the bank of last resort for the city. And I do understand the pandemic situation, and I do see the appropriateness of this. That said, and Becca, you can correct me because you were part of the discussions in prior councils also on this point, which is the following. We can prospectively have these taxes diverted into the city coffers. What we cannot do is retrospectively transfer money back. It's kind of a one-way valve. But there is the following solution to that, which was previous councils discussed, which is just picking the Becker's Lane Bridge, for example. If they need more money for that, that bridge can be reconstructed by a partnership between the city and the URA, where the city would put up money and the URA would put up money. So while the URA would never have that money flowing through their cash flow, the person or entity to whom that, let's say, construction payment has to be paid would get it from two sources. And Becca, please correct me if I'm wrong on that.
No, we have done that before. We've split costs before with the ERA, where it's exactly as you say, one check from the ERA, a check from us.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any further comments from council?
Thank you, Becca.
Thank you,
Thank
Becca.
I'd like to give the city administrator an opportunity to comment on this if she would care to.
No, except for that the URA does have the funding in their budget right now to go ahead and finish the Becker's Lane bridge. So they do have the funding in there and some additional funding on top of that. So I think a great conversation with the URA and figure out how we can move forward would be beneficial. And we can bring that to the April 7th council meeting. Becca and I can meet with the URA if you give us direction to do so and come up and present a plan to you. I will say when I've met with other regional managers, the city is in a much better position than many right now. So that nobody's in a great position, but we're in a better position than many.
Okay. Well, then let me ask if anyone in council would have an objection to having the city administrator meet with URA people. Yeah, that seems reasonable. Denise, then I think that would be good if you and Becca could go ahead and meet with them and get us some direction. If you have it by next week, that would be great. Given all the other things that are happening, we would understand if that gets delayed. Good. All right, let's move on to the next item then. It's discussion on the next steps for filling the council vacancy seat. Okay. Judy, would you like to tell us what the requirements are? I could tell you what I remember and you can fill in for what I'm missing.
Okay. Either way, I do have the memo in front of me, so I can kind of go through that briefly if you'd like.
Okay, you would.
Sure.
Okay.
So as the memo states, bless you, that on March 19th, Councillor Robert Todd did submit his letter of resignation effective April 1st. And by state law, the council has 60 days after the vacancy occurs to appoint a person. So what I did is I went through and also looked at our city code and charter. And the first step is to approve a resolution that declares a vacancy, and we do have that scheduled for April 7th for the council as an action item. And so then the next steps would be what would you want applicants to submit? And we do have an application for a vacancy. Do you want a letter of interest, resume, or CV? And are you interested in having them submit any letters from people they may know to endorse them for the position? That's one step. The next would be the advertising. How do we want to advertise? If we just follow our standard, are there extra places you would like to advertise? But those I have listed as our Pikes Peak Bulletin. We can put something in our crier boards, on our website, and then our social media sites as well. And then how long do you want to solicit for applications? And determine the deadline to submit those applications. And then we need to figure out, once we know how many applicants we would need to schedule the interviews. Those do need to be done in a public meeting. They can't be in executive session. They don't qualify under those options. And so, whether you wanted to do those just as a section on a regular meeting or have a work session to do it. And then how you do the selection process. So that would need to be done. There would need to be a legal motion in order to make that selection and appointment. And the way our code reads is once that appointment is made, they immediately assume the duties and responsibilities of office. So there would need to be a swearing in, and that person would immediately step into that position. So that would have all of your applicants, all of your options available at that meeting to do that. And then you'd also need to figure out how you want to officially make that selection. If you wanted to do it by a motion with kind of getting a general consensus through discussion, or whether you want to do some sort of a ballot process and figure that out, because it cannot be a secret ballot. So that's the steps that I saw moving forward here. So that's once again to establish the criteria for the applicant, what they need to submit for consideration, how and where to advertise, determining the time to advertise, setting the deadline for submission, and then once we know how many people we can, and how council to move forward on the interviews and selection process.
I guess what I would propose is that we first discuss what we require as an application and determine what that would be. Judy, I believe you said that we would want, there is an application that that person would have to fill out. And you suggested a letter of intent.
I just offered suggestions of what could be asked for.
Right. Okay. So, well, if we could just enumerate those again and then have a little bit of discussion
Sure.
here.
So a letter of interest, a resume, and possibly whether you want to have them endorsed, a letters of endorsement from somebody in the community in that ward. This is for Ward 3, so.
Right. Okay. So, council, we have some discussion on this.
And Councillor Chandler has her hand up.
Okay, see Councilor Chandler, and then I saw Mayor Pro Tem, so we'll do Councilwoman Chandler first and then Mayor Pro Tem.
So if we're discussing just the criteria, my recommendation is all of the things that have already been discussed, but I would increase the letters of recommendation from 1 to 3. And my rationale for that is that those of us who ran for office had to have a minimum of 25
Signatures.
Names, signatures.
Thank you. But also, but they had to be, yes, a minimum, and most of us had more than that. And I think that I would like to see a minimum of 3 recommendations, because I think in over a 2-week period, and they don't have to be a big letter, just a paragraph or no longer than 1 letter recommending the person in Ward 3 for this position. And the reason why I say that is that for most boards and commissions, including the match board that we are going to be talking about later, we're recommending 1 letter. And I think that 3 letters would be appropriate for the person stepping up to being a city council person representing Ward 3.
Okay, thank you. Julie, I see your hand, but Nancy had her hand up first. So Nancy and then Julie. Nancy.
Yeah, and Judith, I have just the opposite impression. For the boards and commissions, we require a letter of recommendation from the chair of the board. And that's because that person is going to sit on that board or commission. And that board or commission should be looking for someone who's going to fit into that dynamic. So I think they're looking for something fairly special. So I was actually going to recommend against having a letter of recommendation at all. My sense is that people on council pretty much know folks who would likely apply. If we don't know them, that could be an issue. Anyway, I don't want to turn this into a popularity contest instead of something that we can look at what the person brings to this council, what unique position on council they might be able to fill in addition to being the Ward 3 rep. Are they going to be a good fit for our council? And I think we're the best people to determine that through the CV, reading the resume or CV, and an interview process. So I'm coming from a totally opposite perspective. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilwoman Wolf?
Oh, I was going to suggest kind of maybe a middle of the road. I think it would be wonderful if people are encouraged to submit up to, we could say 3 or 5 letters of recommendation. But for me personally, I would be much more inclined to pay attention to that letter of recommendation if it came from someone from the same ward. In other words, I don't think if I do a letter of recommendation for who should fill a seat on Colorado Springs City Council or some other ward in Manitou, I really don't think that should be considered because that's not my ward. I don't even live there. So I get Nancy's concern that there may be a fabulous person that we want to consider who doesn't know anybody and they can't get any recommendation letters, and we don't necessarily want to exclude them. But perhaps what if we encourage people to submit up to 5 letters of recommendation from the same ward? And that way it's optional and we can take that into consideration and give it the weight or the credibility that we want to.
Okay. Any other?
Councilor Chandler has her hand up again.
Okay.
So I was assuming, and I should have said that, I apologize, that this is a Ward 3 representative, and my thoughts were that 3 recommendations from people within the ward that you are seeking to fill. To me, that's not a big recommendation. I know I'm applying to a doctorate degree and it requires a minimum of 3 recommendations from people who know me. And I think that when you are applying for or running for a position, I think that it would be relatively easy to find 3 individuals who would want to recommend you and speak for you and validate you in that position to run for the open position, which will be which will be a position that will not be re-elected for until 2024. So I think that's important that
I'm sorry, it's actually January 22.
I'm sorry, 2023. I'm sorry. This is, so yes, this would be January 2022. Thank you, I'm sorry. But that that we would have 3 recommendations from the ward in which the individual is applying for, which would be Ward 3.
Okay, well, so far we've got Councilwoman Chandler for 3, Mayor Pro Tem Fortune for none, and Councilwoman Wolf for 5.
But mine are voluntary, mine aren't mandatory. There's a difference between, that's the only distinction between Judith's and my position. I don't feel super strongly about it. If we were voting today, I would vote with Judith if necessary.
Excuse me, Julie, Susan has her hand up. Councilwoman Wolpert, please.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. So we appoint this person, but is there an election in November to fill the seat, or does this seat go till January, the same as my seat?
So it does. It goes to the next regular candidate election, which would be the fall of 2021. And then they take their seat in January, the first meeting in January 2022.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So I've got that. I don't know what we've done in the past, but I don't see a problem. I think most people doing this would probably bring letters of recommendation to the table from their ward, would be my guess and hope. So the numbers don't really matter to me. I want to be a little bit careful about what's a good fit for council, because what we really need is what's a good fit for this ward. And that's just something I think we need to be tuned into more so than, our own personal feelings about applicants or our own ability maybe to interact with them. Those would just be comments that I would exercise some caution over. That's what I have for now. I have a couple of questions when we get to the other topics about this, one including timing. So I'll be back for that. Thanks.
Okay, great. Councilman Shada, we haven't heard from you. Do you have comments on this? Councilman Shade is muted.
Sorry about that. I don't have any strong feelings one way or another. I have a sense that whoever is going to apply, likely will know them in the community.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Councilman Todd, do you have thoughts on this?
Yes, I have 2 thoughts. The first is just a historical perspective, if it's helpful to you all. And that is this, that I went through this very same process, right? Because Mayor Nicoletta kind of asked me to come on council, and I was a little bit hesitant about that. Another contender and I both applied, so there were two of us. Me as an applicant, I had no idea as to who the other contender was until the council packet came out. And then at that point, the contender and myself would, of course, seen who was the contenders. And number two, in that council packet would have been, historically, the full application that the individual submitted. And as a kind of an interesting point, if you go back to January or February in the council archives, which are all searchable, you'll find those two packets submitted by myself and a gentleman by the name of David Walker. So I make that historical comment. The other comment I make is that in a previous council meeting, Councilman Chandler emphasized that it would be really, really helpful if somebody in their cover letter said exactly what was their personal motivation for wanting to be on council. And I have found in my volunteer work, particularly with volunteers, and we all are, that becomes a very essential point of a volunteer being able to say, this is who I am and this is why I'm motivated for volunteering. That a lot of times becomes critical because they're really communicating what cultural match they see and why they're attracted to it, if they're really down to what's the personal thing that's really driving them. So Judith, I don't know if you care to reopen that emphasis, but I thought it was very noteworthy that you made that. I hadn't really thought of that as explicitly as when you said it, but for sure, looking back, I think that's a key point.
If I could comment on that, one of the great experiences of running for office was to knock on doors and to get, at that time, a minimum of 25 legitimate signatures in order to be on the ballot. And I know most of us who ran got many more than that. And it was a great eye opener. And for me, it was a great experience in why do I want to run? Who am I representing? And so forth. And that's why I think that it's important for us to consider 3 letters of recommendation, because one of the things that happened to me was how bad do you want it and why do you want it? And I think that it's fairly easy for me to go next door to my neighbor who I've known for years and knock on the door and get a recommendation. But I think it's a little harder to get 3 letters of recommendation, and they don't have to be extensive, no more than a page. And the other thing is, I think if someone's going to serve a ward for 2 years, I think that we want to know that this person has the confidence of the ward that they're representing, and that we take all of that into consideration. And again, later on, we'll talk about the match board, and we are asking we're considering applicants submit 1 letter of recommendation. I think that we need to raise the bar a little bit for someone who's going to serve on city council and represent a ward for 2 years, that we take a look and at least have that person get 3 letters. And I know for myself personally, if I want something bad enough, I'm going to get what I need to get. And I think that's also a way of ruling out those who may not be as interested in serving. So that's my input. Thank you.
Okay, and I haven't weighed in on this, so I guess I will now. The number of letters to me is not terribly critical. I could see allowing up to 3. It would be optional, 3 from the ward. I nonetheless, I think that Mayor Potem Fortune made a good point, saying there's a good chance we're going to know these people anyway. So I think the odds are that that'll inform a lot of our decision making on that. The number of letters, I would think at least 1, but potentially up to. That's kind of where I stand. So that doesn't doesn't necessarily help us. I think we're about even split. Councilwoman Wolf.
Oh, thank you. I was trying to pay attention when Judy went through her whole memo and also, but maybe I missed this, but there is no public input. Is that correct? There's a motion and there's discussion and there's a vote. It's not secret. I get that. Is there any public input? Because if the answer is no, then I really would hate to limit the number of Ward 3 constituents who are allowed to communicate to us how they feel about this, particularly with it being Ward 3. You know, because Ward 3 has all these, you know, Ruxton corridor issues. They're very, very frustrated group of people. So I just want to know if there is no public input, then I would absolutely encourage a minimum of 3 and up to 5, something like that. I can't understand the point in refusing to consider a second or a third letter of recommendation or against letter of recommendation if it's made public who all is running. I would hope we want our constituents to be behind the person who gets selected.
Mayor,
Yes.
Councilor Chandler's hand is up again.
Oh,
What was? I'm sorry.
Well, I thought you raised your hand.
okay.
No, sorry, I
All
did
right.
not.
Okay, so, well, it looks like in terms of the application, we agree on a number of things, the resume, the application, the letter of intent. Where we're having a bit of a problem here is determine whether we want letters of endorsement, and if so, how many.
And is there public input, Mayor? Is that part of our hearing?
And I don't believe so. I don't believe that council has historically entertained public comment at those meetings.
Huh. And is that how we should decide, is based on historically, or is that something we're allowed to invite the public to come do? I guess that's a Jeff Parker question, but I mean, if we're allowed to get public input as an alternative to a recommendation letter, I want to hear. I want to hear from the public. This is their representative.
Yes.
Why would we exclude the public from having input to their own representative? That's so un-American.
Yeah, I'm not saying we don't have to. I don't think council has done that in the past. There are, I mean, the interview process is conducted, and I think that's where the part of the matter resides. And we could decide how we want to do this. I think this part could be, the balloting, the voting process could be deferred until we determine how many people we have. If we have one applicant, then this is kind of a waste of time to even be talking about it. Mayor Pro Tem, please.
Yeah, I'm just hearing a strong desire to have letters of recommendation. So that's fine if that's what council wants. I don't think it's necessary, but council has a different opinion, so.
Well, I guess my own feeling is it wouldn't make a huge difference necessarily, because again, I think this whoever this is, probably somebody we know, somebody in the community. I think the resume, the letter of intent will carry, and the interview will carry more weight, for instance, than the endorsement. That's not to say the endorsements aren't important. It seems to me like as something of a compromise if we said at least one letter, but not more than 3. That's that would be my thought here. Mayor Pro Tem, you'd raised your hand.
Yeah, I also really like Bob and Judith's desire to have on the application for vacancy what their personal motivation is for being on council, or filling in on this seat. I think that's a great question to have answered. We could ask it either in the interview process or on the application, or both.
Okay. And it seems to me like historically those kinds of questions have been asked during the interview process. Councilwoman Woolbrook.
Can we talk a little bit about my concerns about timing with this? I realize we have 60 days from, is it April 1st or April 7th? If Judy Morgan could answer that.
I believe that would be when the resolution is proclaimed, when that kicks in. And
So my concern about this right now, and anything related to this, is that I don't want to rush this. Because when we don't have public meetings and we don't have, in-person meetings where people can come and be in the audience and ask questions. I mean, I do see we have 15 attendees in our meeting tonight, which is great, meaning aside from what we're considered panelists. But I really want to move on before, maybe this will help us answer some of these other questions. I'm hoping. I'm not trying to rush us, but I think we need to make sure that we give this adequate time for this to filter through the community. I know I'm not doing some things that I normally do. I'm not reading the bulletin maybe as online maybe, but I'm just not doing that as much. I think a lot of people right now have really big concerns that might be diminished in a month, maybe, I don't know. So my main request is that however we go about advertising this, it should be maybe a little over the top, more than we would normally post on social media, maybe a bigger ad than we would normally take out in the bulletin. I'm not trying to spend money here, but I think that a lot of people are worried about their jobs. They're struggling with a whole lot of new dynamics now, which may be as many as one or two parental units working from home and multiple children doing all these things. There may be some insecurity about a lot of different issues, and I want us to give this as much time as possible, and that we don't run up against being too late, which would be, I believe, June 7th, am I doing that correctly? But I think we want to go pretty close up to that to make sure that we have enough people getting this going through their head and thinking about this in Ward 3. And I also don't see us, short of emergency resolutions, conducting until we can get back to our normal operating mode. My own personal preference is that we don't do a whole lot of things that aren't absolutely necessary, because I do worry about the public not having a video conferencing ability or not wanting to get on this call and all those things. So those are my concerns about timing. I just don't see a reason to rush this, and my concern is that if we do rush it, it'll be perceived as something not transparent, which I would hate for that expectation to be, or that concern to be out there. But I think we need to double up our efforts in promoting this and giving it the longest amount of time we can to get the most number of applicants from that ward. Thank you.
Mayor, we have Councillor Chandler with her hand up again.
Councillor Chandler.
A little fear came up for me when I hear people say, well, we know these people, and not all of us know all these people. I'm concerned that we don't make any assumptions about anyone that is interested in the position, that we're very mindful that we think we may know somebody maybe on a personal level, but we may not know them on a leadership level, and that we take our personal experience and preferences out of it, and are very, very, very mindful that we just take a look at the person's qualifications and their reasons for running, which is why I think that we need to have a strict criteria, which is letter of intent, CV, 3 letters of recommendation, and so on, and then we go from there. I do totally agree with Susan's point about timing, and not only timing of getting somebody on board, but I've kind of done the math over the last 2 days that we have, and we're going to talk about this later tonight, the match board, and this does segue into what we're talking about right now, because do we want, because the match initiative was very contentious and only passed by 5 votes, do we want to make sure that we had Ward 3 representation voting for the members who will serve on the board? So if we do that, we have to take a look at our timeline and figure that into who we select and when we select them, and also when we select them, when it's a regular council meeting versus a work session. So I want to take all that into consideration, but I think that it's important for us because it looks like that we'll have a resolution on April 7th to appoint someone, but we're looking at the potential of May 5th to have a match board. So I want to take a look at all of that and factor that into tonight's conversation.
Comments?
I agree. That's a really good point, Judith. Oh, sorry, I didn't ask permission to talk.
Right. It's, okay. Right. So if we do a resolution on April the 7th, we could go as late as June 7th to appoint a Ward 3 councilperson. I would be inclined to try and do it sooner, but not necessarily a lot sooner. I believe traditionally the city's taken about 2 weeks to announce the vacancy and to receive applications, and then to move on with interviews and selection. I think Councilwoman Woolbrook's point is well taken, that given the fact that we're in essentially lockdown, it wouldn't hurt to extend that. If we announce officially on the 7th, then I mean, if we can establish the criteria tonight, people could theoretically begin, working on their applications, I guess. We could extend it, say, through the end of April. Earlier this week, earlier today, I was looking at the numbers and I was thinking about the 15th or the 22nd as being the due date for getting applications in. And part of that was to give about a 2-week window, possibly 3 weeks, and then to get the applications into the packet so council could begin to kind of go over it and we could begin to mull over our next step. Do we have comments? Susan?
So, I mean, I have I could be wrong, but it might be that shelter in place gets extended till the end of this month, the end of April is a strong possibility, which means that we have a work session on the 28th, but that might not be a public meeting where we're face-to-face. So the next work session, would that be where we would do interviews? Would that be the 12th of May? Would that be where we would do interviews? And then on the 19th, there's a regular meeting. Would that be where we vote, just as like dates that to think about in the future? Sometimes for me, I just need to talk about a date.
Yeah, those are reasonable targets, I think, in the context of what we've been talking about. We wouldn't necessarily have to do it. Then we could. I mean, for discussion purposes, I think those are potentially good. And maybe that we'll still be locked down in May.
Right. And I guess that gives us the fallback of a work session on the 26th of May and then a regular meeting 6/2, which would be cutting it awfully close. That's a worst case scenario. I'm just saying, like, those are actual dates we could look at if we needed to cut it that close. Otherwise, we would aim for the 12th and the 19th of May.
Yeah, I've got some apprehension about going too far into, say, that last week of May. We'd have Memorial, 26th, the day after Memorial Day. It seemed to me like historically people are a little diffused then, and if we wanted public comment or to do the interviews, that might not be a good time. Maybe what I'd like to do at this point is go around, basically go around the table and poll council and get a feel from some of you who've not commented on this, what your feeling is.
I'm sorry, Mayor, we do have 2 hands raised. One is Councillor Todd and one's Councillor Chandler.
Do you know who raised first?
I didn't catch you raised first.
Well, the Councilman, we'll do Councilman Todd first.
I'll defer to the councilwoman, please.
Okay. Thank you. So I've been taking a really good look at this, and not only looking at this from the perspective of bringing on another council member, but also the other issue of the match board. So here's my thoughts. Please take notes, and then please give me feedback. I've worked on this for 2 days. So if we passed a resolution on April 7th, Tuesday, at our regular session, that we are going to appoint a Ward 3 representative, we would not be able to get anything in the bulletin until Thursday the 9th. So we want to give this candidate, the candidates, an opportunity to give us input. If we gave those candidates 2 weeks to get the criteria submitted to council, we could possibly look at Friday the 24th to get all of the information. That would be the application deadline, would be Friday the 24th. Then on the Tuesday, the April 28th work session, we would have candidates actually present themselves to council and give a verbal presentation. That's bringing us to the 1st of May, which we are looking at selecting the match board. So if we were to select a candidate that week, and I'm not sure this can happen, I'm just looking at it. If we were to, as a council, select our candidate on the 30th of April after the 28th work session, we could have that person come on board on the 5th. I think it's really important that we have a Ward 3 representative voting for the match board because of how close this vote was and also how much this match initiative impacts Ward 3. So those are just some thoughts I'm having on the timeline. Please, this is just input I'm thinking, and please give me feedback so that we can move forward and get not only a council person on board, but also the match board in place. Thank you.
Okay. Councilman Todd, I believe you were next.
Yes, Judith, I respect your request for feedback. Part of my, what I wanted to share dovetails into some of your comments, but it's not going to be explicit feedback to that very lineup. But, you know, thank you for doing that. So if everybody can hold that in their mind, that the specific of the Ward 3 person being in place to participate in the MAC election, I think is my summary of where you're headed. If we can just put that on hold for a moment. Just a couple of points. If I read Judith's email correctly, and it does exactly map to my prior experience, a couple of points of clarification. Number one, this process does not get bifurcated into a work session and then another meeting where you appoint the person and then another meeting where they take their seat. What happens per Judith's memo and per my experience, I assume this is city charter, is that the candidates present themselves at a formal council meeting, and council does a Q&A of them and so forth. And I'll come back to that later, that Q&A point. And council then votes when all the applicants are done presenting. And then that vote is taken, and then whoever wins that vote gets right up off the floor and takes their seat, and the rest of the council meeting continues where they're participating as a peer of yours. So it all happens, summary, it all happens in one meeting. So that would adjust your timeline if, Judith, you agree with what I said.
If I can respond, my own two concerns.
Not Judith, I'm sorry. I said the wrong name. If Judy could respond, because I'm talking city charter and Judy's memo is a foundation.
Got it.
Judy?
Mayor. So in our charter, it does say that the appointed councilman shall assume the duties and responsibilities of office immediately. So not knowing how many applicants we will receive, it certainly could do all the interviews in one meeting, but depending on how many interviews we have that are being held, how many applicants you have to interview, that could, be a long meeting. And Certainly the selection process, once the selection is made, then that person gets sworn in with their oath of office and they assume immediately. So yes, it could all be done in a meeting.
And in my one case with 2 applicants, it was all done in one meeting. I just don't know if the charter specifies that that's the way that's to happen.
It doesn't speak to the interviews and the selection. So
Thank you.
if there was a previous time where they had probably 7 applicants, or some was a pretty good sized number like that. So 7 interviews. If you did a 15-minute interview, then that wouldn't be so daunting. But if you wanted to do hour interviews or half-hour interviews, I mean, those are all considerations. But yes, it will be done in one meeting. And certainly as soon as the selection is done, then the person does assume their office at that same meeting.
Thank you. That's all my comment for now. Because I want to keep the flow. I want to participate in a way that the flow that Judith started continues.
Well, I'm wondering if we look at May, then we would have regular meetings on the 5th and the 19th. We had mentioned the 19th, and in my mind, that would be about as late as I'd be comfortable going with a regular meeting. Now, if we did it on the 5th, then maybe we would, presumably if we got somebody on the 5th, then we could go to the next regular meeting to form the MAC board. That's just a thought. Mayor Pro Tem, I saw your hand raised.
Yeah, 2 things. One is I'm just have a little red flag on when we have to seat the other the new Ward 3 rep, and I'm not 100% certain that it's not 30 days from 1st of April as opposed to the 30th of April. Judy, are you 100% certain? I'm sorry, the 1st of April versus the 7th of April.
Well, let me look at the.
As I read your cover document, it sounds to me more like it's the 1st of April, but I don't know, or the 2nd of April, I guess.
Well, it states, the state says within 60 days after a vacancy occurs in the city council. And so according to this, it says that the council has to recognize that there is a vacancy through a resolution. So that's why I'm saying it ties to the resolution date as opposed to the actual vacancy date that was provided by resignation.
Councilwoman Wolf.
Could I just say one more thing before I go back on mute? And that is, I think we could push the match back 2 weeks. That's less of a timeline at this point. So I would rather we concentrate on the timeline for the city councilor and nail that down, as opposed to, I would definitely put the match after that. I think that's excellent counsel. So thank you. I'll go on mute now.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Wolf.
Oh, I'll pass. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Let's see. Councilman Shada, do you have comments? You're on mute.
It seems like to me that the statute that Judy quoted, it seems like the latest date we have to appoint this would be the 19th of May. 60 days within the vacancy.
Okay. And you're saying that's barring a special meeting?
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
But I think a special meeting, I think that communicating that just makes it even more complicated.
Yeah. Okay.
So John, you're saying 30 days starting
Julie,
April 1st?
Julie?
Well, it looks like Colorado revised statute says that council member vacancies within 60 days after a vacancy occurs. Well, then that would seem like to me that would be, I don't think it's within a resolution of the vacancy occurs. It looks like it just says that it's within 60 days of the vacancy happening, which apparently is going to happen at 1 minute past midnight.
Well, the vacancy doesn't officially happen, let's put it this way. The Counselor Todd's resignation is effective April 1st.
Right, so it'd be 60 days after that.
Well, I'll repeat what I was saying. So it is talking specifically about within 60 days, this is state law, within 60 days after a vacancy occurs, they have to appoint a person. And then the city charter states the council shall declare a vacancy by resolution. So that's what I'm going off of, that the declaration of vacancy occurs on the 7th.
Okay, Julie, got your hand up, go ahead.
Oh, just real quick, I don't mean to be argumentative, and but I do think now that I've had a chance to stare at it a minute, we should double check with Jeff Parker, of course. But theoretically, if Judy's interpretation is correct, then we could theoretically refrain from declaring a vacancy by resolution for months at a time, and that would then defer the 60-day onset for months at a time, and I doubt that was the intent. So I'm guessing that Jeff is going to say, oh no, you have to start counting day 1 of 60, I think he's going to say is April 1st for that reason. But yeah, we just have to ask him.
Okay. I guess I think basically all learn to read. I don't know that we necessarily need Jeff Parker just yet. I guess in thinking about all this, I would target May the 5th as a day when we interview applicants, vote, and bring that person on board. Working backwards from that, I would think the applications would need to be in the previous Wednesday. That'd be the 29th. That would give the city clerk a little time to compile the applications and get them in a packet. If we did that, that does basically give the public most of April to respond. That's one way of looking at it. That seems to make sense to me, but I'm not completely married to that idea. I know, Susan, you had asked to have more time rather than less. That would give the public till the 29th of April. Do you think that's yes, you recognize, Susan.
I think that as long as we're really over the top in how we're trying to advertise this vacancy, because we're not having public meetings of boards, commission, nothing. I mean, we're all staying 6 feet away from each other. Right. So therefore, I'm on board with your timeline as long as we go the extra mile as a city to notify people that this is happening.
Okay. Now, I think if we got to the 5th and for some reason things shape up badly, we would still have the 19th. That would be our back date. That would still fall within the 60 days, however you figure the 60 days. Okay. And God forbid the safety net on that was we'd have to have potentially we'd have to have a special meeting. So that's thought. Julie.
Thank you. I was just thinking that it may be helpful if one of the advertising requirements, because it's free, is that there be a special email sent out to each, the director of each board and commission, or whatever you call it, the chairman, as just another way to access potential applicants, particularly where, has been noted by several of us already, that our applicants are likely to come from existing volunteer pools.
Understood. Good point. Denise.
What we can do is once you guys make a decision of how you want to do it and what the dates, I can send an email with our communication plan and get feedback from you at that point. So if we miss something, you can bring it to us and say, make sure you add this or that, so that we don't miss any ways of advertising.
Okay.
Judith has her hand up.
Okay, Judith?
So I would just like to reiterate that I'm going to go out on a limb and say on the April 7th that the council in our regular session will approve the resolution to bring on another council member from Ward 3. Because April 9th is the first time that we can advertise advertise in the bulletin, that would give us, if we closed applications on the 24th of April, that would give the council several days to look over those applications, and those people could come to the work session on Tuesday, April 28th, and present themselves. At which time, after that, I don't know how many applicants there would be, then we would choose an applicant after that. I know personally, when I was sworn in, I was grateful that it was during a work session so that there weren't any things to vote on, because I think that if we are looking at this council person voting on the match board, we have to give them an opportunity to orient and also look at the applications for the match board for the next regular meeting, which would be on the 19th. So I'm just saying, you know, it can be done. It can be done. April 7th, we passed a resolution. April 9th, we are assuming that advertising is going to go out. 2 weeks plus 1 day would be Friday, April 24th. We close the applications, and on April 28th, on our work session, we have the applicants present themselves and give a presentation, and at which time we choose someone, and then we have them come on board, and then we decide as a council, is this person going to be part of deciding who's on the match board, which I think we should consider this person on the match board as voting on the match board. And that encompasses either the 5th or the 12th, and by the 19th, we have both taken care of.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem, please.
Two things. One, I would think we could start in the Pikes Peak Bulletin tomorrow and just say that a position is opening up, and you know, details on how to apply are forthcoming next week or whatever in the next issue, something like that. I'd start.
We do that before the resolution though, because we haven't voted on it, and you know, I'm assuming that we're going to vote for it, but can we do that assuming that we're going to vote for it? I that's premature in my position.
Let's let Mayor Pro Tem finish her comments, please.
Thank you.
Yeah, I personally don't. I mean, we're having a public discussion about it tonight. I don't know if Jack Elder is on or not, but it could easily be in the newspaper tomorrow anyway. So I would just, I don't think it's premature. Councilman Todd has announced his resignation very publicly, so it's kind of out there already. And yeah. Secondly, I was just, because I do think it's very important that the new person, first, Judith, you were actually sworn in on a regular session, and you did vote on a couple things that night. Two is—
I did, yeah.
I know, it's all blurred together. And I was just looking at the match thing, and I think we could easily move the application day to May 27th, that they would have to have, I think I have this correct now, to May 27th, which would give the individual at least 1 or 2 meetings and appoint on June 3rd, appoint the board on June 3rd. So those, I think the match board is the dates can easily be slid by 2 or 3 or 4 weeks. That's all, thank you.
Okay. Councilwoman Chandler, did you have follow on?
No, I agree, and thank you for yes. I guess what I want to say is that because the match vote was so close, I think it's really important that we bring on a Ward 3 representative who's able to look at the applications and be part of that process and be available to vote on who sits on the match board. That's primary. And I was trying to make those numbers work over the last 24 to 48 hours. But I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Fortune that we have some wiggle room. I just know that we want to get the match board up and running and prior to the tax being taken out July 1st. But we also want to bring on a very qualified and passionate and interested Ward 3 representative.
Mayor,
Okay,
Mayor,
right.
I'm sorry, we have Counselor Todd who has had his hand up for a few minutes.
okay, Councilman Todd, please.
Yes, if I may just stitch together what I've heard. And what I've heard is, and I totally respect it, the mayor is desirous of, as soon as practical, filling this seat. And I think that's a really good position to take. And then I've heard the other side of the coin, which is Nancy's flexibility on the match to allow that process to happen in an orderly way. I think the one missing point in the conversation is under the accelerated program of the work session for interviewing the candidates, and the thought that simultaneously council would vote on that day. Here we have a dilemma because you can't vote in a work session unless you post the work session as being a work session followed by a special council meeting. And then you get into how will the public react to that, and will they understand that engine and caboose move that day, or do you wait till the next regularly scheduled meeting to do that vote?
Okay.
It's a dilemma. I'm just pointing it out, but I think it fits within the guidance that Judy Morgan provided. Judy, if I'm correct.
Okay, thank you. Susan, did I see you raise your hand? Susan Wilbur?
I just have a technical question, which is that Bob resigns tonight or at midnight or whatever, and we do the resolution on April 7th, but does Bob attend that meeting? He's not a council person anymore. So if he attends, he'll be in the audience. Is that my presumption? Okay. I wanted to get that clear in my head. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. It seems like, okay, so what it looks like there was some support there to have a deadline for the candidates at the end of April. I heard the 24th. And you know, the following the 24th, the next regular meeting would be the 5th. In my mind, the 5th, we would have the applications in, we could do the interviews that night, vote, and the new person would be seated on the 5th. Now, if we get up towards the 5th, then we find that because of the coronavirus or for whatever, you know, circumstances that unseen, we could go ahead and push it out to the 19th. That wouldn't be my favorite thing to do, but we'd still have the 19th. We could get it done at a regular meeting before we hit June. I guess I'd like to gauge and see how much support there would be for that idea. Is there opposition to that idea?
Just a question. So if we are voting on May 5th.
Is this Judith?
Oh,
Judith, okay,
yes,
go ahead, Judith. All right.
If we are going to vote on May 5th to seat the Ward 3 representative, then it's my understanding that we are pushing out until the May 19th, appointing the match board, which I'm fine with. I'm just asking.
That would seem like a logical, you know, that would seem logical to me. Mayor Pro Tem?
I had actually, it could be May 19th or May 27th, and give the new person a week or two to get used to being on council.
I like that.
Okay,
Just a suggestion, and we don't have to decide that now.
right.
I agree.
That could be deferred. Well, suppose we said that the applications had to be in by April if we said April the 29th, that's a Wednesday, that would give the city clerk, I'm hoping that would give her sufficient time to compile the information and get it in the packet so that we would be able to preview it and then act on it on May the 5th and conduct the interviews. Does that seem like an agreeable plan to everyone? Okay.
So
then
are you saying applications close on that day?
the applications would be due in the city clerk's office no later than the close of business on Wednesday, April the 29th.
Okay, and then are we set on the criteria of that versus, with regards to CV, letter of intent, letter of a recommendation? Have we already figured that out?
No, we haven't determined how many letters, if any, we're going to entertain. We
Okay,
kind of
got it.
tabled that, came over here, but I think now we've got the deadline set up there. Councilwoman Wolf, you had your hand up?
Oh, I was just going to say that I'm under the impression that the bulletin generally, at least for the public, requires submissions by Monday. So I didn't know for sure if we could get something in by the 9th, if we did wait until the resolution was passed on the 7th. And for that reason, I know that I think Jack Elder is still on with us. But for that reason, I do want to make sure we hit it in the paper as soon as possible. So I just wanted to go back to Nancy's suggestion about that. I think there's no problem in notifying the bulletin immediately.
I agree.
I think that'd be a good thing. I think if we could go ahead and get an ad in this week or a notice of some sort, and then continue potentially through the 23rd, and then last call would be on the 29th. That gives people 3 weekends. If they're home all week, it doesn't make much difference, I guess, but it would be 3 weekends for anybody who's working. Just a minute. City Clerk, please. Judy?
Oh, Judy is
Judy, you're muted, Judy. Judy, you're muted. You're muted, Judy.
I get it.
Okay.
So Counselor Todd has his hand up, so I just wanted to let you know that.
Oh, okay, thank you. Councilman Todd.
Yeah, just briefly, John, when you mentioned the contingencies that might cause the date to go from May 5th to May 19th, obviously the virus, obviously other unknown things, but I think specifically Judy pointed out that if you have a few candidates, probably no problem. If you had, I think she said 7 candidates, you might find yourself really limiting time. So that could also be a factor. So in this meeting, we've kind of moved from what the requirements are of the applicants without closing that into the process. And now we're talking about the process. And on that, I want to just briefly say, go ahead. On the process, I want to just briefly say that those who were on council when we did the city administrator interviews, in fact, when we interviewed any candidates, we got very disciplined as to what our questions and answers would be. In fact, I can't remember, but I think somehow, and for a good reason, we hashed those out in executive session so the candidates wouldn't know them ahead of time. I can't quite remember that. In some cases, I think we gave them to the candidates ahead of time. In some cases, we didn't. So that's a point that needs to still be resolved on process. And then the second point that needs to be resolved on process is that, in my experience, when I was there with my competitor to present, I cannot recall who presented first, but I do remember it was awkward because both of us were in the room and we were asked to stay in the room. And therefore, whoever followed basically had the insight of what the other person was saying. And I think you may want to consider that the candidates wait out in the lobby or wait out in Memorial Hall and come in and do their piece. So you don't have that, let's just call it cross-contamination of one being able to compete against the other with information the other one can't respond to.
Right. Okay. That good point. Good points. And I think we can we'll act on those when we get a little closer to that. I think we have some leeway as far as that goes.
Yeah, this is my last meeting, so I just wanted to share that.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Not as a citizen.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I think several of the questions that we began here, I think in terms of the deadline, if it's all right, I would propose the 29th, close of business is the last day to receive applications, that they would be in the packet for the meeting on May the 5th, and that we would interview candidates that night and presumably elect or select a new council person. We do have the 19th as a fallback date if we had to, if something went awry. That gives the public close to a full month. And we would try to get a notice in for this Thursday's paper in the bulletin, and then certainly follow that with ads or notices through the 23rd. So we've got 4 weeks in the bulletin, and we have our social media. If that sounds reasonable, I'd like to make that our deadline and our sequence of events. Does anyone, do you have deep heartburn with that?
I don't have any deep heartburn. I'm just saying that if there is a candidate who is very interested and qualified and puts in all of their criteria, but for some reason can't be there on the night, is there a plan B for them to still be in the running on an alternate night, or is that it? If for some reason that they absolutely, a legitimate reason they can't be present.
I think that would be up to council. It seems to me like we would try to accommodate people's schedules. We expect, I think, them to try and accommodate us as well.
Exactly, but I'm just thinking. I'm putting in my COVID-19 brain, thinking if there's a reason, a legitimate reason why they can't be present, but they are a good candidate and can't make it. Do we have a plan B for them to still be considered as a candidate?
Well, I think we could conduct the interview at a different time. And we do have the 19th as a fallback date.
Okay.
Also, Council, Mayor Pro Tem, please.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we have interviewed candidates for positions via teleconference or video teleconference previously as well. So
Okay.
that's also an option.
Okay, thanks. That'd be great. Thanks.
Okay, so I think the advertising, I think city staff can handle that. Okay, we've got the deadline, Judy. I think what the remaining question here on the application procedure is going back to the earlier discussion. Do we want letters of endorsement? And if so, how many? Councilwoman Chandler had argued for 3. Mayor Pro Tem Fortune wanted none. Councilwoman Wolf wanted 5. And the rest of us are not really too married to any number. What if we said at least 1 and potentially up to 3? 3 would be optional. Is that a reasonable compromise for where we're at tonight?
Not for me. I see no reason to exclude the public's input from their own ward. I don't know why we're spending a half an hour talking about whether we're going to let a 4th person give some 2-minute input.
We're spending more like an hour and 10 minutes.
Yeah,
on
well,
Yeah.
great. Yeah, no, I don't see the point of, I haven't been convinced by anybody. I haven't even heard an excuse about why we should refuse to consider a 4th or a 5th one if somebody happens to have a 4th or a 5th one. What's the problem? What's the reason? Why would you not want to read 6 more sentences from a different constituent? What's the problem? I don't get it.
Me personally, I think 3 is sufficient.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, it may be sufficient. I'm not making it a mandatory thing, but why, just because it's sufficient doesn't make it less sufficient if it's 4. Is it less sufficient if the person wants to throw in a 4th or a 5th recommendation? Why would that offend you?
Well, it doesn't really offend me, but I do think we ought to try and keep this manageable.
I don't see anything unmanageable about reading 4 little letters. Or 5. I mean, how is that unmanageable? It's an option. It's not a mandate. You're intentionally keeping the public from being allowed to give their own input on their own council person, and it's going to be reported in the bulletin that the mayor's reason is because it's more manageable with a maximum of 3. I'm just trying to find out what's so unmanageable about 4 or 5, but I guess there's no answer, and I won't berate the issue.
Mayor Fortune has the floor.
Yeah, I would just say that I would think that the person would go out and get letters of support. And in an election, you get both the pros and the cons. You get people who do and do not want the person. So we won't have, there's a strong likelihood we won't hear from the people who don't want an individual. So I guess that would be my concern a concern of mine when I have about having letters of support. But I'm easy. I'm not going to fall on my sword over this.
Yeah, and if I got an email, or if we all got an email, Nancy, from somebody who says, oh, please, God, don't appoint so-and-so, what are you going to do? Refuse to read the sentence? I mean, really?
And the reverse is true as well. If they want them, they can email us as well. So again, I don't need letters of recommendations, but that's me.
Mayor,
Yeah, Julie.
have Counselor Todd with his hand up.
Okay, Councilman Todd.
Just in the spirit of compromise here, because it's just a thought. As a prospective candidate, which is the thing I went through, a test of motivation is under what Councilman Wolf proposes, saying it's not mandatory, you can submit up to 5. That would be an indication of motivation and creativity on the person to think, well, I probably ought to get 5 fairly diverse people in Ward 3 to support me. People that aren't necessarily viewed as all the block of the same, neighborhood, street, whatever. I mean, maybe I need to go out over into, because Ward 3 is really chopped up into, I think it's, one time I counted it, it's 5 distinct neighborhoods. And that would cause them to have to, the person who wanted to be really creative would go into a neighborhood probably they've never even seen or walked before. I mean, it's just a thought. And by not, and you could gauge things by that and gauge things by what people say. I don't think you would gauge, being a peer reviewer, I don't think you would gauge things by the number of letters of recommendation. I think you would gauge them by the quality of them, the diversity of them, things of that nature. And so, I'm just presenting this as a compromise because there is no right and wrong in this. Thank you.
Okay, Councilwoman Wilbrook, you had said you didn't really seem to care about the number of letters. That's what I recorded, or sort of ambivalent. Have you changed your mind at all?
No, I mean, I think you should have to do the letters, and that I think that's fine, whether they're 1, 3, or 5. I mean, in the back of my mind is the nagging thing on this, and this may not be the case for Ward 3 because there's definitely a lot of really active people in Ward 3 for sure. But we've had 2 elections where people ran unopposed.
Exactly.
So, I mean, I guess it'll be interesting to see how this pans out. I'm thinking that there are 3 of you, correct, who live in Ward 3? Is that correct? So you probably know your neighbors better than I know your neighbors. So my assumptions based on your passion for this is that you feel like there are some, a significant number of people who might be willing to go to the effort to do this. I mean, appointments are a kind of nerve-wracking for me. I can say I feel much better when people run for office and we have that option. That's not any kind of slight towards Bob or anything like that. It's just appointments make me uncomfortable because I really believe in the process.
Right. Okay. Great.
So if I would say at least 1, but I think when you apply for a job, sometimes they say this is required, but this is preferred. And what do? You opt for those preferred things. So that may be the languaging, the semantical way out of this is to say 1 letter preferred, or 1 letter required, 3 preferred, and that will get people thinking about how they want to handle that.
Okay. And would you say 3 preferred or 5 preferred?
That's up to the ward. I would say you Ward 3 members, your ward better than I do in terms of people who are going to be engaged and willing to put themselves out there for this.
Okay. Just wanted to sample there. Councilman Shada, your thoughts on this? Do you care? John's muted.
I kind of like Susan's idea, which is, suggest that people send in 1 letter, and, the more letters of recommendation, the better. I think that just gets us better insight on what's going on.
Okay. Would you put a limit of 3 or 5 on it, or?
I don't know if I have a limit issue on it. I think if you're motivated for this position and we give kind of a range like that, I think you're going to try and hit kind of the top.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. I guess I would require 1. 3 is a sufficient number for me, but if 5, if others want 5, I can say up to 5. That would be tolerable. Would anyone be opposed if we said we require 1 letter of endorsement and up to 5 would be allowed? What about 3? Maximum?
Yeah, I would like to weigh in as someone who ran unopposed.
Right.
That the criteria for me to be on the ballot was 25 legitimate signatures. And I felt that that was totally insufficient, that if I was going to really run, that there were 60 blank spaces on the ballot, the petition that I was given. So I felt that it was important for me to get as many people as I could. And so I'm just going to say to you that when I look, I got 58 signatures, and that was a great learning experience for me, by the way. So if we have a minimum of 1, but no greater than 5 recommendations, I think that's reasonable. However, I can just say that I'm going to take a look at the person who's gone out of their way to get 5 recommendations. So I think that's a good goal, is that if we have no less than 1, but no greater than 5 letters of recommendation, that will give us a good litmus test of how much the person wants to serve in this position.
And we'll have to be clever too to know that we're not pandering to a popularity contest. But okay, I think we've talked about this long enough. My inclination would be we require 1 letter and allow up to 5. Anybody opposed to that? Okay, so Judy, does that give you direction on what we need for the application process? And we have the deadline.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Does anyone want
Can I
to?
ask just one thing, Mayor, before we move on? It's a really quick thing, but Judy said initially that she has an application form. She hasn't told us anything about that form, but apparently that's the form she's going to be requiring that people fill out, and it'll be available on the web.
If you'd like, I could go ahead and pull it up on the screen so you can look at it. It's one that was used previously. So it's not my personal form, but it's one that was used in the past. But if you'd like, I can pull it up and put it on the screen.
Personally, I don't have any interest in seeing it. I just wanted to be clear that this is the application form in addition to the letter and recommendations and so forth, and the resume. That's the so forth part. But that the application itself will be available to people on the city webpage?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Our last item of business is the MAC board position description. Does anyone want to take a quick break and we come back to this?
Sure. Yes.
Okay, so I've got 7:53 on my clock. Let's come back at 8 o'clock. Okay. Everybody get a drink of water and some fresh air. See you at 8 o'clock.
Okay.
Started. So the next and the last item is the discussion of the board, the match board member position description. Mayor Pro Tem Fortune had prepared a document that was in the packet, so I would like to give her the floor to brief us on that.
Thanks. Just very quickly, hopefully you all had a chance to review this. Per guidance from the council a couple of weeks ago, I drafted a position description for the board members. and included in there board member responsibilities, some very high level board level responsibilities, and the qualifications and an anticipated timeline. So based on our previous discussion over the past couple of hours, I would recommend that in the 1 to 3rd paragraph that applications will be accepted through May 27th instead of April 22nd. That kicks it back about a month and allows the new council member to be more fully integrated into our council before they have to address this issue. And then I would also like to include in the application itself, or we again could just do it at the interviews, that what their personal motivation for being on this board are. I do think that's very revealing, especially for this particular board. In addition to the application, let's see, in the 3rd paragraph also, there is a hot link to the application itself and where to send it to. So that's what I'm asking, is just for the council's any input they might have, any changes they would like to see in this position description, or permission for us to just go ahead and move forward with this position description as it is, and those new dates being May 27th, that the applications would be due, and then potentially June 2nd is when we would make the selections.
Okay. Do we have any comments? Susan?
Yes, thank you. Nancy, thank you for doing this document. This is very helpful, and for taking the time to write it out. I have some logistical questions that I don't quite understand. One is, have we already received applications?
We have received from individuals. I think there's one individual who submitted very early on, in the very beginning, back in January, I think. An individual who did in fact submit at least one person who submitted a resume for it. I don't know, Judy would know this better, if any actual applications have been submitted. We do have, I think 7 or 9 people who expressed interest that we would, and oh, by the way, Alex, our public information officer, has drafted a communication plan to get this out, although now with an extra month, we've got more time to advertise for it. So does that answer your question?
It does. I guess my concern is with this process, I've not seen or heard officially as a council member who's expressed interest or who's applied. And I just think that going forward with this, I would like to see those as they come in. So if an application comes in, I'd like for Judy to forward that to all of us. So
okay, and I know that I've not received applications at all. I had a couple people come to me and tell me that they were interested. So the only people that I know, I believe Randy Hodges submitted his resume, and I believe Neil Minch submitted their resume. I believe they're the only 2 that have submitted resumes to date. But there were 5 or 6 people, Judy, that had said that they are potentially interested in helping work through this. And I would absolutely go out to them and say, here's what you need to those 7 or 9 people, go out and say, please submit an application now in accordance with this guidance.
Okay, I appreciate your answer. Thank you. So going forward, what I'd like to see is, since, as Judith mentioned multiple times, this was a very close vote. I think lots of openness, lots of transparency, lots of outreach. If we approve this tonight, the work that you did on this, thank you. Those are just my hot buttons for this issue, and that council be notified all at the same time as application rolls in, whether we make a decision as a council that Judy gets those and she holds on to them and gives them to us at a meeting, or they just roll up to us through email, which would be my preference, so we'd have some more time to review them. Those are my issues around this topic. I think we definitely want to be open and transparent. COVID makes that harder. I think anything we're doing during COVID, it's just going to be harder to feel like we're, getting in the reach that we really want to. But I know this has been out there for a while, and we've extended it tonight, which I think is great. And all the discussion we had about that for 2 hours was good, related to getting the new council person from Ward 3 on board. I think those are the things I have most to say about it, is I'd like for us to function as one body on this moving forward.
And just to be completely transparent, I have not solicited names at all. I have just had emails to me expressing an interest. That's it. And I provided all of those to Judy. That anyone that had submitted anything to me, an email or a resume, I submitted all of that to Judy, because we didn't know how we were going to go forward. And I've not received anything in probably, over a month, well over a month, almost 2 months probably. So I've been trying very hard not to move out ahead on this.
Thank you.
Okay. I'd kind of like to go around just round robin and get everybody's just kind of a quick assessment to see what we're thinking with this. We've been looking at it for a little while, so I think we may be getting close to agreement. Councilwoman Chandler, what are your thoughts?
So just a point of clarification. So I'm hearing you say that May 27th is that application deadline? Is that what I'm hearing?
Based on what we just discussed, that would be a proposal. I mean, I think it gives us plenty of time to advertise and get it in, yeah.
Okay, and then the selection of the board would occur at the first regular meeting of June, on June 2nd? Is that what I'm hearing you say too, the recommendation?
Yeah, May 27th, and then at the earliest June 2nd. And I do think it would be dependent upon how many, hopefully we'll get, at least 7 applicants.
Okay. So I would like to say I'm okay with that timeline, because that would also bring the new Ward 3 representative into the mix. And also I agree with, I can't remember who recommended it, but I would like to see the applications as they come in. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Shader.
I'm hoping we'll keep one central repository for all these applications so that I don't have to look through my email box to find them all.
Okay. Okay, that's kind of a...
I don't care how they come in. I just want to make sure that everybody has visibility to them. I want to certainly find that people are talking about something and I kind of miss something in my mailbox.
I would suggest that if, I think Judy could send them out to council as they come in, but she would also be the central repository for them.
They could be part. We could also include them as part of the packet for the June 2nd meeting, if in fact we go forward that day.
They would absolutely be part of that packet, yes.
Okay.
Do we have a Dropbox?
Judy, could you respond to that? I believe
we have, sure, we have a utility payment box that people can drop things in that does get picked up by somebody in the office. So that could be a physical way, or they could come in via mail and they'd end up in my mailbox.
Okay.
That's great. I appreciate that. If I can just follow on with that. I didn't even think about that. What I meant was like an electronic Dropbox that council uses.
Oh.
Denise is raising her hand.
Yes, we could set one of those up. We do have that.
Okay, so we could, so that would address the logistics that I think Councilman Shader was addressing. Councilman Shader, do you have anything else? You're on mute.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, good. Thank you. Councilman Todd.
Number one, Nancy, fantastic job pulling this all together. Thank you. And secondly, this is just maybe just a typo. This board would formally be called an advisory board, right? The document says board, but I think we want to say advisory board.
Okay, I will make that change. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else, Bob?
Nope.
Okay. Councilwoman or Mayor Pro Tem Fortune? Anything else?
No,
Okay, all right, thank you. Councilwoman Wolf? Anything else?
No, thank you. Looks
Okay,
good to
thank you.
me.
Okay, and it looks good to me also. So I think it sounds like we're in agreement here, subject to the modifications that Mayor Pro Tem had proposed, chiefly regarding the timeline. So I think we could go ahead, Nancy, if you would modify those dates in the documents and we could get it out. Okay.
yeah, so what I'm hearing are the dates and add advisory board, not just match board.
Yes. Okay, all agreed on that? Sound good? Okay, Denise, does that give you what you need, you and Judy? Okay, great. Okay, next item of business, council correspondence. Councilwoman Wilbert.
Thank you. I have 4 short things. One, I just want to name the people who are part of the Manitou Springs Foundation that did the $500 grants. I believe they did, oh my God, was it 122 of them? It was $122,000, so they did more than that. And I just thought,
78.
thank you. I thought it was important to just mention their names tonight in this public meeting. So Ken and Sandy Duray, David Hunting, Tweed, and Susan, Natalie Johnson, Ann Nichols, Kelly Snyder, Laura Newman, Dan Stewart, Tom Plum, and Susan Watkins and Tweed Kasaya. I don't know, I just always give them their first names. But anyway, a real shout out to them publicly for, this is 2 weeks worth of time. And yeah, amazing work, incredibly well received. Along those same lines, I've gotten some council correspondence on these next 3 topics. One is, while so many people are at home, I've gotten some council correspondence specifically about things like noise violations. So there's been some music playing after hours. I know we're all like struggling with being at home a little bit, maybe a whole lot. And then other things like dogs that are barking while people are trying to telecommute to work, to school, multiples in a house. And so if this is just something that we can all be a little more sensitive of as we're trying to manage this, I know it's hard, but I actually got quite a few notes in my mailbox about these types of issues. Some of us live in closer neighborhoods than others. So especially in my ward, there's kind of people, we're kind of all on top of each other, and there's a lot that we don't think about because we're in and out of our houses and all that stuff. So I just wanted to mention that publicly for anybody who's listening, and for Jack Elder, that that it's different, and to be aware of that and think about it a little bit. Nothing real serious so far, I don't think, but as time goes on, those tensions may get a little higher and things might be a little more harder to deal with. You know, if you haven't been furloughed, if your job is secure and you can eat out and support our businesses that are doing takeout and curbside, this is essential. If you can buy a gift certificate, a number of the stores, even though they're closed, would be more than happy if you contacted them via email or phone and were able to buy a gift certificate during this time. So I've heard from a lot of business owners who are really, really very concerned. I'm also very concerned, and I know all of you are concerned as well. So this is more of a public shout out. And I also wanted to take this moment because I have gotten quite a few emails from people who have appreciated and supported Councilman Todd during this time that he's been on council, which is, I believe, 4 years, give or take a few days. And I also wanted to take this time in this last formal meeting to thank Bob for the time that I've spent on council with him, and to tell him how much I have appreciated his service. I know that many in his ward appreciate his service as well. He's always had a great list of projects that come directly from his neighborhood that he has worked very hard to try to resolve, and he's resolved many of them. That list has always been a lot bigger than my list, and I've always admired how well he's managed that list of constituent, complaints, wish list type things. I'm grateful to Bob. Bob is like the professor that you have in college, where you go to college and you want that professor to give you the answer to everything. But he sits down and he tells you the 360 view of everything. So he lays out every possible way to look at a problem. And to me, that's been a great asset during my 2 years on council, to have him on this council and to do that for me. And I think that one of the things that I've also really enjoyed about spending some time with Bob is that we are both very passionate. I'm very passionate about my daughters, and he's very passionate about his granddaughter. And we've certainly shared a lot of conversations about empowering women and helping women become leaders. And I could go on for a long time, but I won't. Thank you, Bob. I really enjoyed my time on council with you.
Thank you, Susan.
You're welcome.
Councilwoman Chandler, would you like to go next? Do you have anything?
I would, thank you so much. First of all, I would like to segue into what Susan just said, and thank you to Councilor Bob Todd for your service. I have a few things. The first thing is regarding COVID-19. We received a email that Judy forwarded to me from James Vanderveer, a private citizen who is trying to keep people employed, and he contracted with the Catholic Archdiocese group of Woodland Park, and they're making masks. These masks are sewn by women. They prevent droplet formation, and they are donating them for free. He has been trying to get Manitou to come on board to distribute these masks, and so that's how I came involved with this. And we distributed the first 75 masks to St. Andrew's Church to give away at the senior lunches and also at the food bank. I'm going to show you what one looks like. This is my mask. It is washable. It is adorable. I don't know if you're there, but this is what it looks like. I can wash this. And I hope you have all been listening to the media that it is very imperative that we consider that everyone wear a mask if you are not able to be greater than 6 feet away from someone that you are in contact with. These masks will be on coming in waves of 100 a week. I will be taking responsibility for distributing them, and so if anyone needs a mask, we have them. These are in spring colors. They are Easter colors, and I think at some point I would not be surprised if we are mandated to wear masks for the foreseeable future. So just to let you know that we have plenty of masks. Manitou has masks. The second thing I'd like to say is that I'm kind of sad that some of our initiatives with the Climate Action Work Group have been put on hold, but I totally understand. We've had to cancel the 50th annual Earth Day Climate Action Potluck Dinner scheduled for April 22nd. However, we are planning on going forward with our tree planting on April 25th, which is a Saturday. And I understand that nationwide it is recommended that we keep in mind that our social distancing. However, we have 148 trees coming, and so we are planning on planting those. Some of those will be in parks. We are not asking for volunteers. We will not take any volunteers. The Climate Action Work Group will be utilizing the public works people that will be digging the holes for these trees the day before. They will be practicing social distancing and wearing masks. And on the day of the tree planting, James Vanderveer will be supplying masks for everyone, but we are planning on going forward with the tree planting of 148 trees on Saturday, April 25th. So I'm just putting it out there because I want to make sure that the city of Manitou is on board. City parks are in planting and growing
of our produce is considered essential. So we feel that we are within our purview to plant these trees. So unless I hear otherwise from the city, we will proceed with planting those trees on Saturday, April 25th.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Wolf.
Well, thank you. I just had a couple people suggest to me when we were talking about, or they were talking about the city budget and concerns about the loss in tax revenue, whether it makes sense to extend the pot store hours for the 2 stores in Manitou. And I know I emailed the mayor about this to ask if this is something people are interested in. It's just kind of an easy way to make extra money, or potentially to make extra money without, I don't think, endangering anybody. I also thought it might be helpful myself because I've noticed these long, long lines now for people, customers of the stores, since they are being instructed to stay in their vehicles and have their supplies delivered through the car window. And that's causing just, it's kind of slow going. And I thought it might be a little safer if they're social distancing a little more in their cars. I don't know if that makes sense. Just to have more hours. I'm not passionate about it one way or the other. I have not bothered to call the stores and to ask if their owners would be interested in this. But it does seem like, to me, a potential easy way for the city to offset some of its losses. And I just said that I would bring it up.
Okay, and Mayor Pro Tem Fortune she also saw that email and she did some research. So Mayor Pro Tem, your turn.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks, Julie. I thought it was a great idea. Unfortunately, not only can't they extend hours, I mean, technically they can go till 12 o'clock at night if the city allows them to. State law precludes them from going after 12 o'clock at night. Unfortunately, I talked to the guy from Emerald Fields, and he is not only can't extend his hours, he's had to reduce his hours to 11 to 7. So he's taking it, and he's had to reduce his staff to 50%, as all businesses are having to reduce staffs. So I put the ball in his court and said, if this is something that you're interested in under emergency conditions, please come back and let us know. But at this point, there's no way they can do it. I do have a call in. In fact, he called me back yesterday and I missed his call for the Maggie Fields guy. I did send him an email, but I have not heard back from him yet. But I have a feeling he in fact, when he called me back, he left a message that he was also laying off staff. I don't know if he's laying off staff at this Maggie Fields. He's got a bunch of the Maggie Fields stores. So anyway, that's kind of where we stand for the people who are interested in that. So good idea, not feasible at this time.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for following up on that.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem, did you have anything else?
I did. I was talking with Natalie today, and she will be stepping down as director of the Manitou Springs Creative District. And they're looking at a new job for an interim, or the chamber is apparently looking as an interim economic development recovery position. So they're looking for someone to begin work by May 1st. So more to follow on that. That could be interesting. And for Natalie she's just now going to be the Manitou Art Center Executive Director. That'll be her full-time job now. Okay. And the chamber's working on economic development recovery. So I think Denise, I don't know if you've had a chance to talk with them yet, but they're doing some modeling as well. Well, actually, I think you saw some emails from them. So, that obviously we'll partner with them on that. And lastly, I would just encourage everybody to go out and encourage people we know to apply not only for the Ward 3 opening, but for this match. And I would continue to just say, it's coming, please. And I've already been going out on the council position, just letting everybody I know that it's coming open, and here's, how you're probably gonna have to apply. And lastly, I would just like to wish Bob the best of luck in his follow-on, and I hope his health improves, and do wish the best for him. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Shada.
I don't have anything to report.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Todd.
Yes, I have 3 comments. One is I want to just express, great gratitude for being able to serve on council and be a public servant for 4 years and a quarter. For me, the greatest gift I received was really getting to know my community, really at the grassroots level, all the way up to how the leadership functions. It certainly has been a lesson and course in democracy and how democracy works in America. I think many citizens have come to me over time. I racked my brain as to how to explain things to them about our democracy, and I dug back to Winston Churchill, who's made the comment, I'm going to paraphrase it, not exactly, but basically Winston Churchill at the end of World War II, or maybe just before that, when things were really tough, he made the statement that democracy is not perfect, but so far it's been the best form of government the world's known. And I strongly believe that that is the case. And this experience really got that message through to me. The second point I want to make is throughout my career, which has involved a lot of turnarounds, buys and selling as a company, so forth and so on, startup of my own, failed after 3 years. I've definitely learned that when one door closes, another door opens. So first, let me speak to when one door closes. The door is obviously closing tonight. John Shade is correct, at 12:01 midnight, actually at 12 midnight. So I feel very strongly about that door closes. And today, I had an opportunity to have a one-on-one conversation with Denise and a one-on-one conversation with John. There's a few trailing items that I am committed to follow through on. It has to do with my liaison assignments. It has to do with some outstanding citizen issues. I will wrap all those up within 2 weeks. Denise and John both have in their eyes mind about who the receivers will be or how those will fall into place. I will certainly do the same with my replacement. But other than that, I will not be involved in your selection process. What I will be doing is, as a citizen, staying tuned to every council meeting, anything in the Pikes Peak Bulletin, things that are easy for me to absorb. So you're welcome to contact me as a resource if you choose to, but I will not be doing anything on the, let's just say, proactive side. So that is addressing, not completely, one more point on closing the door. I could not tell you, and I've gone back to about 1985 with lots of discussions, former mayors, former council people, residents of longstanding and so forth and so on. And I can authentically say that the city today absolutely has the best plan in place for building institutional knowledge at the city staff level. I think we have, even though the last 2 years were difficult, it was well worth it. We really found an ace in Denise, her plans and how she's thinking about always building the foundation of staff, the trust in staff, mutual trust back and forth is fantastic. And I think this will be the first time since '85 that the city has really, under a leadership and management that will make that happen. It's clear that Denise's participation, she clearly understands the differentiation between council policy and staff as operations. And then relative to our council group, we have just a wonderful mirror image for working with her, because John clearly understands he's policy, our team is policy. I don't think that that's ever been so cleanly delineated since '85. And I also really believe, bottom line, the council represents great diversity for the community. You've seen that in our votes. You've seen it in the mock vote. Council voted 4-3 and then voted 3-4 on 2 critical issues. And lo and behold, that's a 50-50 vote. Council as a body, regardless of which area of the zone we were individually in. So the council process really does work as a representative body. It's not individuals. So I think that's what I would share there. As far as opening a door goes, I can tell you on Sunday, I was contacted by, and I'm engaged in now a regional project. The regional project is very dear to my heart, literally. As you know, it's very difficult to get access to medical service right now, and the process I was in was interrupted and has been deferred. But actually, the project that I'm going to be coordinating is a breakthrough that can be implemented at the local level with a team of engineers and business people, being fostered by some of the leadership people in the region. And it's going to deliver a product that will help the medical community. I can't say anything more about it now, but that's the project I've moved on to. I never would have thought this came up. It came up on Sunday, and I've been working on that already. So just the concept, one door closes, another door opens. I think that's true for all of us. And then my last point is the lightweight one. Susan, I did try the professor ranks. I spent at the end of our unsuccessful startup, only because we never took funding and were willing to share our wealth we were creating. That was kind of our tragic flaw. But at any rate, after that tragic flaw, I went off to the University of Colorado Springs and was a part-time instructor there. And then that led to me to be invited to the Colorado Technology Institute, where I was a part-time instructor there. So I've tried that rank, and I still have this vision in my mind someday to join a research team at a school of management, where I expect to integrate my experience in private industry, public industry, international, domestic, and serving on city council. So thank you all, and I wish you all the best.
Great. Thank you, Bob. Well, see, for my remarks, Denise and I had had a couple of teleconferences this week. One was with Chase Bank officials. We did chat with them, I believe it was a week ago yesterday, regarding keeping the bank here in Manitou. They say they haven't made their final decision. I'm not optimistic that the conversation gained us much ground on that. The other conversation was I think, more effective, more promising. That was with Mayor Suthers of Colorado Springs, with his chief of staff, Jeff Green, and with their parking expert, Scott Lee. And they are still willing and actually quite interested in helping us with our parking and traffic situation. So despite the effects of the coronavirus, they did say that they wanted to maintain that support and that interest with us. Those two rather mundane items said, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Councilman Todd for his service. Bob, I wish that we could all, that we could do this in person, and I hope that we'll have a chance at some point in the future to get together and wish you well, and maybe have a drink or a piece of cake or something like that. The task at hand, of course, we all face the coronavirus. That's got to be a huge concern for everybody. I know you've got health concerns. I'm glad that you're going to be able to get those things addressed, and I wish you the best on that. I do think you've set a really fine example. I know as a Ward 3 constituent, when you were serving in office, you took on some pretty difficult battles. And in Brook Street Bridge, I think you were the only council person at the time that really got invested in some of those things, and you fought a 6-1 battle. So So for bravery and tenacity, you certainly get high marks on that. So I wish you the best. Okay.
Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you. Next item, city administrators reports. Mr. Cheney.
Just so you know, Dole, the city engineer, is working hard on the incline. I'm going to assist him as he needs me to. We do plan on meeting with Colorado Springs on Thursday and start the talks on what to do and try to get some things planned by summer, and or at least have some plans going into the fall. So we are working hard on that. And number two is we have Civic Ready is up and running for sign up. So Alex and the communications team's been working hard on that. He made a video on how to sign up that I believe he either posted on YouTube or will. And so people can sign up for that. We already had 100 people sign up. And so when there's alerts in the future, they will get announcements, COVID or whatever they sign up for. And lastly, I just want to say thanks to Denise for her leadership. It's been a tough couple of weeks, and staff appreciates her taking charge and pushing us to do the things we need to do. So thanks, Denise, very much for that. And Mayor, for your announcements every week. The calming voice helps in a trying time. So thanks, and all council, which I'm sure you're doing your part in the community to keep things calm. So we appreciate that as staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Denise.
Thanks. I just have a couple of things. As you know, we are doing budgets daily. We're having managers meetings as we go through this. So we're keeping a very tight eye on the budget and the funding. June will kind of be another decision point. If things aren't picking back up in June, then we're going to have another decision point at that of what else we may have to cut to move forward. So know that we have decision points as we move forward, depending on what happens and what we look at. We do have a FEMA group. It includes Christine, Crystal, Becca, and Karen. And those four are working and managing all the FEMA information that is coming down and how we can ask for reimbursement and what that looks like. So they're on top of it and watching everything and making sure that we're tracking things now and that we have everything in place. Because if you know anything about FEMA, if you don't have every single I dotted and T crossed, you will not receive the funding, and it takes a lot of paperwork. So we have a group right now, and they're going to start working with the chamber to help and so we're going to have a weekly meeting with the chamber and make sure that we're all on the same page from the perspective, being able to support the businesses and get them involved as quickly as possible. So we have that group working with that. We continue, as you know, to put everywhere that we can to keep the 6-foot distance. And so we're really working on that and put signs up. I think we have over 40 signs up, if I am correct, Roy, and Public Works has really worked hard to make sure that we get those signs up and that we're really educating and doing that. There's been 2 cars on Ruxton that have gotten hit by BBs. So we're starting to monitor that at night. So we're monitoring those as we manage through this and watching things. Other than that, I will say the leadership team have really led through this. When we meet every morning, we talk about all the issues. What are we missing? What are we not? How can we cover it? And thank you. I know Councilor Shada sent us some information about things being flushed down the toilets, and we were doing that. But anything that you see or you think that we may be missing, I really would recommend that you send me those emails so that we as a community are providing the information you need. I do believe that Alex has done a great job with getting the word out. We are posting constantly, we have a great, on our website, if you look at COVID-19, it has everything that you can possibly think of. Anything that we get, we post for both the business and for individuals, all the declarations, so it's all right there in one place. And Councilmember Todd, thank you for your service.
Thank you very much. I see 2 hands. I think Susan was up first. Susan?
I just have a question for Becca and Denise while they're on the line. One of the things that a lot of deadlines for filing taxes have been moved, and the one that I don't have an answer on is your state sales tax. So you either do that once a month or quarterly. And since we asked the state to collect for us, are those deadlines, I know they're still in effect, but is there any movement on changing those or not? I just had a curious question about that.
So far, I haven't heard anything about changing them, and that would be the state's decision. When the city signed an agreement back, I think in 1982, for the state to collect the sales tax, part of the agreement was that we would go with their rules. So we have no control about extending anything. It would have to be the state's decision.
Okay, I think the state made some decision about that. I can send you the email.
Oh, that'd be great if you do that.
I'll send it to you and Denise so that you guys can see it. It may be that you're right, but it sounded like because we asked the state to collect for us, like there were tiers of what you could do. And I'll send it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Wolf. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I got emailed by Dave Wolverton during the break and didn't notice it till now, but it says the Zoom app crashed on me tonight. Can you find out if Denise reported back to council on the USGS contract? I guess that's a follow-up of the issue he had asked me about earlier.
Right, and we've discussed that already, and I believe we have a more detailed, I think we've got it scheduled for a future agenda. In fact, I spoke to Dave about him attending that meeting. He didn't know what his schedule was going to be like. But I know Denise and Roy have addressed his questions, I think, to the best of their ability. And they invited him to a meeting with when we'll have a USGS person here in the future. So that's what's that?
Sorry, I'm sorry. Has that meeting already been scheduled?
We're hoping to have them here. I believe it's the work session of, oh, I can't pull that up real quick, but I believe it's the April 28th work session. And I've confirmed that and let everybody know. So USGS will be here and they'll be presenting at that point.
Yeah. So
but here's where I'm confused. I thought Mayor Graham said that there will be a meeting with USGS and that Dave Wolverton was or would be invited to it. Is that different, I would imagine, from the work session?
No, this is the same meeting. This is the work session. And I did talk to Dave about that. I believe it was when we talked about it, he didn't know what his work schedule was going to be. And then on top of that, we had the COVID-19, the virus problem. So I don't think he and I have chatted about that the last couple of weeks, but I know we did have some communication, and I think he has the most up-to-date understanding of that. Perhaps he doesn't, but we can definitely email and invite him to that meeting on the 28th.
Since you invited him to the meeting on the 28th, should I assume that you're going to allow him to ask questions, or is it going to be like the work sessions we've been having where people aren't allowed to talk from the public?
Well, in general, people are not allowed to talk from the public. We discourage that because the intent is for the work session to allow us to get our work done. Now, of course, what we do is we do invite people to come up to the table. For instance, Natalie Johnson has come forward a number of times to discuss things like the MAC proposal and whatnot. So when we have, a subject matter expert, certainly we invite those people up. I would anticipate that if Dave is interested, he would have an opportunity to talk one-on-one with the, well, we're all there, but he'd talk one-on-one with the USGS individuals. Some of Dave's questions, I think, are technically deep enough to where it doesn't make sense for us to try and translate or relay it. It'd be better to have him up there, up close and personal.
At the work session table?
Yes. I mean,
and
of course,
if we're still doing this by then on Zoom, then he can just participate as at the table through this Zoom?
Well, that would be the hope. I remember 2 weeks ago we had we had someone from the public who was able to come in and zoomed in and chatted with us. I don't remember if it was Josh was somebody or Simon, I forget, but that would be the expectation. It would probably be good for Dave to play with the Zoom a little bit more so we can make sure that it'll be supported properly.
Okay, thank you. I'll do my
Okay.
best to relay that to him.
Okay. Let's see. Denise, did you have anything else? Yes.
The other thing I would say is we can schedule a meeting with Dave and USGS individually. So if that is something that that is, I think we've offered that, but it just hasn't worked out. But we are more than willing to have USGS and Dave talk over the phone or meet and talk about the concerns or the questions that they may have. Roy, do you want to add to that? I know you've been involved.
Yeah, we did ask him twice if he wanted to meet with them, and so far he did not.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure, and we were just going to wait for the meeting with the council then and see if he wants to attend that meeting.
Well, okay, perhaps we could offer that again. I know some time ago his work schedule was interfering. Now he's, the virus has interfered, so he may have changed his mind. He may feel like that would be appropriate. And probably at his level of expertise, it would make more sense for him to talk one-on-one with someone else. We'll be over the heads of the law. Roy.
Yeah, do you want me to reach out to him and see if he would like to meet with them?
Would you please?
Sure, I'll do that.
That would be, yeah. Okay,
Oh,
great.
thank you, Roy.
You're welcome.
Okay. I believe we are done. Anything else? Okay, we're
Thank you,
adjourned.
Bob Todd. Thank you, Bob Todd. I failed to say that, but before we go, I just want to thank you for your service.
Thank you, Julian. Just a little footnote. I think 4 of us live in the Agate Hill neighborhood of Ward 3. So, I mean, for me, Becker's Lane was a project right from the day we closed down Becker's Lane Lodge, and still is. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, great. Well, Denise.
The only thing that I have that you've assigned me to work on is to work with the URA. So I will be doing that. And then the city clerk, Judy, will be working on a couple of the items that you guys have announced, and we'll get that going. And I'll have a communication plan for the council position, and I'll send that to you guys.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Good night. Be healthy. Stay safe. Take care.
Wear masks.